This show is brought to you by The Makery, the podcast network for makers.
Welcome to Knife Talk, the #1 podcast for anybody interested in knives, whether you're a maker, a collector, or you just have this morbid obsession with knives like many people do. I'm here, as usual, Craig Lockwood of Chop Knives, joined as I am every week by Mareko of Momassi Fireworks.
Yeah, I'm changing it.
Momassi Fireworks. There we go.
I'll have Katy Perry playing in the background anytime I come on the show.
There you go.
yeah. And Geoff Fader of Fader Knives. We're here every week. So every Monday we put an audio podcast, and every Friday evening we record it live with you guys too. So it's good to see people already in the chat. Guys, how's it been? It feels as if it's 2 days since we last spoke, but a whole week has passed again. Mareko, let's go straight to you. How's it been?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off. Yeah, so my am I messing that up? No, I think my birthday was last weekend.
You
Yes,
think?
it was, yes.
I don't know. I'm already forgetting. I think I'm 37 years old. My sister was in town. She lives down in New Orleans, and her partner flew up. I'm here. We grew up here and everything, but he also has family just a few hours north. So his parents live up in Bellingham, where the great Bob Kramer hails from. And so they're up there visiting them right now. But it's great to have her in town. I only get to see her like once a year. We have a super tight relationship where I know a lot of people sometimes struggle with having good relationships with their siblings, but somehow, maybe it's through all the bullshit that we grew up with, which you can hear more about on a little bit more about on my interview with Geoff on the Full Blast podcast. But we're really tight. We're like each other's best friends. And so it's really, 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 really good to see her and spend time with her. My son absolutely loved hanging out with his Auntie T. And we did some, he just got on the bike and we went cruising and we cooked meals. We did pizzas in the backyard. It was really great. So they were here until Tuesday. I was out of the shop for 4 days in a row. It was amazing. That's the most time I've had out of the shop in a really long time. And then what else is going on? I just been more forging. I finished fabricating up those squaring dies. At least right now they're holding together, although I could hear a little bit of squealing and cracking a little bit. So I don't think they're gonna last forever. They're gonna get me through this project, but I think I really need to figure out how I can use that 3-inch plate that I have, or plate, whatever, flat bar, 3-inch flat bar, and get some squaring dies, like, I don't know, plasma cut or like water jet out of those.
How thick are they? How thick are the 3-inch thick, you say?
Yeah, they're 3 inches thick. So problem with that is I don't necessarily want to ship it because that's going to cost a shit ton, because right now they're in giant like cross sections or pieces that probably the smaller one probably weighs about 80 pounds. And so I got to find somebody local to do that and help me break that down. But once I do, I'm super thankful that I had those squaring dies, because the patterns I'm working on right now are kind of very mathematically driven. And so I have to get all the pieces to fit together like a nice little puzzle. And if they're kind of what has a tendency to happen is, instead of being perfectly in square, let's see, I can do Madonna strike a pose. They kind of like cant off just slightly and become a parallelogram. So they're flattened on top and bottom, but the sides kind of like are at an angle.
Oh, wow.
It's a very, very gentle, slight angle. And it doesn't fit together very nicely that way. So the squaring dies definitely make a huge, huge difference. Other than that, I just been trying to stay cool. A couple of things I did notice from last week that happened in the last week is our sponsors, Texas Farrier Supply, lost a friend, James Cox, who was like family to the family, the company, and he was a big help. Worked with the company, and so I just wanted to give a shout out and let them know that our hearts are with them. And Sam Cobb of Hilltop Forge is running a raffle that he's doing the drawing on the 1st of September. And so you still got a few more days to enter into. Oh, wait, what day is today? Is the episode gonna air too late? No, I think it's
Monday.
coming up.
When's the raffle?
The raffle's on Wednesday. Yeah, my days are all messed up. All right.
Okay,
So the raffle is
This
on
goes
Wednesday,
live Monday.
September 1st. Right, Monday. Okay, so they're $20 a spot. It's a 10-inch Sanmai buoy with a carbon fiber handle and stainless fittings. All the money is going to benefit this sweet little girl. She's probably like maybe 1 or 2 who's going through some health problems right now. So anybody that can jump over and give some support, that would be super helpful. Again, it's Sam Cobb. He's at Hilltop Forge on Instagram. He makes great hammers. Actually, the hammers I use are made by him. So go check that out.
Nice. So you had a good birthday. That's the main thing.
Yeah, super low key. Again, I cooked for myself, but I'm totally fine with that because I enjoy cooking, and I want the food that I'm eating on my birthday to taste delicious. And so we did kind of a lunch.
That's 2 years in a row you did that. You threw everybody under the table. Come on, man.
I've been doing it for the last several years, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. That's all I want to do on my birthday. I just want to eat good food and spend the time with people I care about. Yeah. And so Perfect. I'm a little picky, so I just do all the cooking myself.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. Well, on your story of sisters enjoying your sister's company, I've actually got my sister staying with us at the moment.
Right.
They've been here for a week. They bought a house over here a while back, which they hadn't actually seen, so they're over here now, so they can see it and so on. And it's really nice to have, people around and that kind of thing. So that's really nice. My week, it's been a little bit crazy. I'm amazed that it's been a whole week since we last spoke because time has just flown by. So my sister arrived Tuesday, I believe. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. Not long after that, I had a call from the local bar who...
they wanted you to sell your tab?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Like, okay, Junior, we're calling your accountant.
Every sort of July and August around here, there's events on all the time. And we got a village square here, and the bar was put on entertainment. But theirs had cancelled, so they needed entertainment. And they were like, "We've heard you've started a band." And we're like, yeah. They were like, "Well, could you play?" And we're like, "Oh, geez." So we had literally 2-3 days to sort of get ready for this, like a mini gig. We only played 6 or 7 songs, but we were really nervous. They were meant to have a couple of acts on. They had like this African bongo player first, and we were going on after, and we said, "Oh, right, okay." But he played for like way too long, so we're just standing around now. We're just like, come on, this bloody bongo player. Once you've heard bongos for 5 minutes, that's generally enough bongos for the year. You do you don't need that many bongos in your life anyway. But he went on for an hour and a half. So we were left. We went on at 10 p.m. In the dark, basically. Not even on the stage because he had so much stuff on the stage with all these different types of bongos and percussion stuff. So we set up. Exactly. So we set up next to the stage, and the idea was we were going to pile our stuff onto the stage when it's time. But it was so late, we just said, "Well, fuck it, we'll play here." So yeah, we played, I think 6, possibly 7 songs, which is all we know at the moment anyway. And it went really well. And it was nice that, my wife was there with the kids and all the rest of it. And the whole village was there. Everybody's up dancing. So, yeah, it was received really well. So that was our sort of pre-show, if you like, because on the 17th of September, we're doing sort of a bigger show, like the full evening, hour and a half set.
Yeah.
So it was exciting. And it's, so I mentioned last week, I'm a little bit of a sort of a, the power goes to my head, let's say, I suppose. So I suppose I'm the sort of the musical director of the band. They need to do as I say, basically.
Of course.
And so we had a couple of rehearsals this week. We've actually only had 2 hours of the whole band being together in the same room. Because generally, the drummer can't make it or the bass player can't make it. So actually together as a band, we've only had 2 hours, all of us together. So yeah, I'm saying, make sure you listen to these songs. We had rough recordings of them. Make sure you listen so you get the structure right, because they'd always forget in them, and we just hadn't spent enough time rehearsing, basically. Come to the show, and it was me who fucked up more than once. Forget the second verse and just go straight to the outro. So I had to send
Get your
email
balls
after
broken?
the show. After the show, I had to send emails to them saying, I really apologize. They're like, oh, no, it's fine. Nobody noticed. And it was, oh, geez. But it completely nerves got to me. And I think it's because I had sort of family there in the audience as well. And, your hands get sweaty and I'm dropping plectrums. It was just, yeah. But it was good fun. It was good fun. That's the main thing. And what else this week? So
what was the
today,
song? Wait a second. What was the song?
What? Oh, that I fucked up. It was a song, but you Americans won't know it. It's by a band called the Stereophonics, who are a Welsh band, and it's called "Local Boy in the Photograph."
Okay.
Quite a simple song, but I just got a bit carried away and went straight to the outro after the first chorus. And
What was the set list?
it was quite basic stuff. The usual sort of cover band stuff that's easy to learn quickly. So it was 20th Century Boy by T-Rex.
Good one.
Teenage.
That's a deep cut, by the way. That's a deep cut for the cover band genre. That's a deep cut.
Yeah, everybody does it. It's it's three chords basically. It's it's that simple. Teenage Kicks by the Undertones. What else do we do? Local Boy in the Photograph by the Stereophonics. We did Heroes by David Bowie.
Wow.
We did Come On Feel the Noise by Slade. Most of these are British bands, so you may not know them. And we finished with Creep by Radiohead, which is like every cover band needs to finish with Creep. That's the rule. That's the rule. And it went really well. We had people up dancing, and people asked for more as soon as we finished. And so we didn't have any more songs, so we just literally played a song again, one of the songs we'd already played. Most people didn't realize it was fine. It was my wife didn't even realize, and I was like, yeah, we played the same song twice. I didn't know. But yeah, it went really well. So let me just have a quick look in the chat here. We've got lots of people here already. So Aaron McVeigh, Francesco Mucci, Rainy Day Forge, Grateful Knives, Griffith's Handmade Knives, Fiery Eyes Forge. We got plenty of people here.
Ben Stark. Ben
Rocco
Stark's in the
Handmade,
house.
Ben Stark, and maybe his mother with him. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, there's plenty here. So hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. What else happened? So today, my wife and I had to go to the city for some medical reasons. And I sort of alluded to this in the past, how the last few months my wife hasn't been too good. But it's all really good news. So there's going to be another little awkward joining the crew.
Wow.
Yes. So
Exciting.
obviously we've known for a while, obviously. But today was the big sort of 12-week scan. What was really important to me that there's only one heartbeat. Thankfully, there's only one heartbeat.
No more twins. No more twins.
No more twins. They're hard work. So that was today, which went perfectly. So we're very happy. But yeah, it's just been a crazy week of craziness, and I'm really pleased that July and August here are mental, like crazy busy. And now we're coming to the end of it, and now things can get back to normal. I can get back to work, and I can, it's just been, we've had people out, and it's just so much going on. So I'm just really pleased that now things can settle back. Our twins start school this week as well, which is both scary and quite exciting. So yeah, it's a crazy time. So the future's gonna be very different for me. There's gonna be a lot of us, shall we say. But yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
That's huge news.
It is. Thank you very much.
Exciting.
Jeff, your week. What has been going
It's
on?
not as exciting as not exciting as yours. It's outstanding news for you. Amazing.
Thank you very much.
I mean, we couldn't be happier for you. Let's just say that. We couldn't be happy for you. I'm grateful that I'm not having another child, but I'm happy for you and your family. It's going to be awesome. You'd have to get a new. The new house is going to have to be bigger, right?
We're going to need a bigger boat. Yeah. No, no, it's not. We've already been discussing how we're going to have to reconfigure the house to,
Do your daughters know? Do they
Not
understand?
yet. They won't quite understand. So they know that Mummy's belly is bad at the moment. because she's always been sick as well. Let's face it. So they know something's up, but obviously they don't understand the whole baby thing, you know. So we're going to wait a little bit longer till she's, you know, obviously showing, and we can explain. And you know, that's where her baby is. So yeah, it's all very exciting. Very exciting. It's good news.
Great news. Great news. You're getting a lot of nice messages in the chat. Lando Novak, sweet news. Grateful Knives, congratulations. Ben Stark, congratulations. Tomer Botner's in the house. He says congratulations.
Tomer's got a new one himself.
Tomer's got Tomer's got a new one too. All these pandemic babies. We're going to see, you know, there's going to be some sort of name for them. I know that they were calling my kid was part of the what is it? Was it the quarantine? That was the name for it, which was lame, but fine. Yeah. You guys are going to be like so we better figure out the name here, and then we can start it and be the viral word, and we could have it here first.
We could trademark it. Yeah.
If you in the chat if you guys in the chat want to come up with a new name for what it's like to have a fresh baby on the pandemic, and it's good, maybe we'll put that in the t-shirt next to who the fuck needs a Kirkery or something like Kukri. So yeah, it's amazing. You know, it's funny that you guys are talking about your sisters, because I spent all day yesterday with my sisters. I don't really see them very often. They're older than me. They're my half sisters, but I was kind of raised with them because they were 16 and 20 when I was born. So they were into me being a baby, and they weren't really they weren't around that often. So it was just it was fun for them. So I was always very close to them. And one of my sisters was having a back surgery. So my other sister and I went to the hospital and stayed all day in the hospital, and it was great. It was a good experience. You know, we spent a lot of time kind of reminiscing and, you know, catching up. And at the end of the night, we were there all day and into the night. And then she came out of surgery fine, and we had a real good. It was a good experience. But it's interesting that all three of us had weird sister things this whole week. So but yesterday was kind of nice. I don't really take days off to spend with the family, but, you know, waiting in the waiting room and kind of catching up with my other sister was really kind of neat. And we were talking about, my sister that I was, you know, in the waiting room with is an artist, and my sister is having surgery as an artist. So the three of us have been talking about doing a show together for a long time, because we're like all very much along the lines of not interested in being in group shows. And, you know, it really would be kind of interesting. So we've been talking about doing a show together, because one of my sisters is a world-class curator. And I've been kind of pushing to do an art show for the three of us for quite a while. So we're working on it. And actually, the name is actually kind of funny. One of the things my dad used to say to us all the time is, "You don't know what you're talking about." He used to say that to us all the time. "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." He could say the sky was blue, and he would say, "You don't know what you're talking about." So we're tentatively, the name of the show is "You Don't Know What You're Talking About."
That's a good name for an art show. Yeah.
And then when we do the second one, he also the mod we were talking about. My sister was talking about the power of yes. You know, that's Oprah's thing, is like believing in yourself and the power of yes, and repeating you're going to be successful, and kind of like manifesting it and stuff like that. And I was saying, well, what would be the fader, you know, word or expression that would kind of define us? And she says, "Oh, I know exactly what it is. It would be, it's enough already." So that's the name of the second show. It's enough already is the name of the next show. So
perfect. So
that was that. But in the shop, I was getting a pile of stuff done, and I alluded to it last week. Oh, by the way, my results for my colonoscopy, everything's fine. I've been doing this I've been getting too many people mad at me for, you know, as if my health is, you know, I owe you some results. You waited like I waited, so everything's fine. So far, so good. That's that. We'll do another cliffhanger later. So I alluded to the fact that I might be doing another video with Condé Nast, and I had a meeting with them Wednesday, and I shot a message to my business partner Tony, and I said, "Will you come on this Zoom call? And, you know, just I like you there." And he's always, you know, he's very good. He understands these meetings. He understands talking to people. He kind of like he absorbs it all, and it's really kind of helpful because it's a different set of eyes. So I get on the Zoom call, and it's just me and Tony, and then all of a sudden all these windows open up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, wow.
All of a sudden I'm just like, I'm sitting like this. I did like this with the shop in the back, just like this. And they're like, "Hey, Geoff, how are you? It's good to see you. You know, blah, blah, blah. Did you watch the videos that we sent you, the previews of the shows that we're doing?" Yeah. "Well, we would like you to audition for this show." I was like, audition. Well, I mean, they were like basically saying like, we're here to watch you kind of like talk about what you do and the thing. And then this is all of a sudden I'm just like, I wasn't prepared for an audition. I didn't say this, but in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, well,
they want to see how you are on camera, how you.
Well,
speak,
they know how I'm on camera because I already did a video, but they were just like
true.
seeing if it was going to work for the show, and I had to like not only have ideas for the show, but I had to like, shuck and jive and bounce around. But it was an audition, which I wasn't prepared for. But at the same time, it was like, if I've been doing all these goddamn podcasts for so long, if I can't figure out how to think on my feet at this point, it's just like wrap it up.
Yeah.
So it was great, and it was nervous making. And the funny thing is talking about what we've been talking about in the past. We talked, I guess, last episode or the episode before about how these TV people have an idea what they want, but they don't understand what goes into it. So there was a lot of like, do you think you'd want to make a knife on video? And all of a sudden we're just like, well, we have to figure out the timing of, how much time you have to film, and it has to be up here. And there was a lot of like things that they didn't think about, they don't know how to, like, how long will it take you to make a knife? Well, what kind of knife? It's just like, we're going to forge it, or we're going to stock removal it, and then I'm like, what's that? And I have to explain the differences. And is it going to be a hidden tang knife? Is it going to be an integral knife? And then all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm going through all these different scenarios because it's like, not only am I in charge of like figuring out what we're going to do, but I have to be able to figure out the pacing of everything because they're not sending a crew up here for a week.
Actually, it could be a 3-day shoot for a 20-minute video. Yeah.
I'm 2-day, a 3-day shoot would be generous. A 3-day shoot would be generous. Like these are people who like, they're used to doing like a 7-hour shoot, So like getting them to come up here and so there's all these like weird moving parts and I already thought about that before the meeting and I was trying to figure out, can I stage it or can I have multiples at different stages? Because I don't, they're not going to be sitting around waiting for me to like,
Oh no.
They can't. I mean, heat treatment's got to be out the door, and they're going to want to see the normalizing. You want that little black line, and
you would have to have multiple stages, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it, and then all of a sudden, it's just like So we were kind of going through it all, and then in my mind, I'm also thinking about going all the way the whole way through and do. So here's the interesting thing. So basically, we got another meeting coming up at some point. They were psyched, and I sent pictures of the shop. And they wanted me to walk around with the computer to show what my shop looked like. And I wasn't prepared for that either. Ben Stark is hitting on me. I shaved and I lost a pile of weight. I looked fucking great. Was that from Ben's mom? I wasn't Ben's mom. Come on, man. Don't go after Ben's mom right out of the chute. Come on, Ben. I'm with you, man. I'm with you 100%. So it was good. I mean, this is the first time I've felt like, I'm way thinner than I was for that first video, and I feel good. And it's just like, now it's starting now, especially when I got that call, it's been like, I wouldn't say I have an eating disorder, but let's just say that I've been eating so much fucking raw spinach. I'm like a rabbit. I'm like going to be, it's unbelievable. But it was interesting because I started to think about, and getting into the knife talk, I was started to think about how, what's my responsibility not only to the audience, because they don't give a fuck. I mean, this is another TV show that's like, they just want as soon as I told them about the forging, they're like, oh yeah, we want to see the sparks and shit. And all of a sudden I'm just like, okay, well, that's going to add on time to the whole filming and all that. Yeah. And I started to think about what's my responsibility to not only to the listeners based on how I was blasting the Food Network a couple of weeks ago, and then what's my responsibility to our industry, because anything that's good for this industry is good for everybody, whether you like Forge and Fire or not. It's good for the industry. It gets people thinking about it, and these good videos, Alex Steele, whatever you want to say, it gets people into it. So then I'm thinking, well, maybe I need to do things differently, as opposed to like when we sharpen knives, we talk about the different ways we sharpen knives. I don't use stones at the end because it's like I can whip them out much faster, and I whip them out much faster with the belts. I've said it a million times. Dude, there's a Bon Appetit video with Brad Leone and Bob Kramer, and he's sharpening with belts. If he can do it, if he's doing it, then it's enough already. So I'm thinking about like, what's the right way to go? And it became an interesting foray into the feeling of imposter syndrome. And I was actually I'm getting ready to interview Jimmy DiResta for Full Blast. And he has a new episode out of Making It, and they're talking about imposter syndrome. And it made me start to really kind of think about where imposter syndrome comes from. And I was wondering how you guys feel about that. We could talk about imposter syndrome or like what the responsibilities are, where I should be going with this or stuff like that. But imposter syndrome came up with their show. And it was very interesting because I think with knife makers, especially with what we do and who we talk to and stuff like that, there is that idea of where does imposter syndrome come from and why do we feel this way? You know?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll tell you what, let's have a 10-second think about that whilst we hear from one of our sponsors.
Nice.
Combat Abrasives makes the world's best abrasive belts for knife makers. Available in any size at unbelievable prices. Go take a look at combatabrasives.com and get 15% off with promo code KNIFETALK15. Do it now.
Brian House is also in the house as we
Brian
speak.
House is in the house, and he only listens to this so we can hear his own voice. We know what Brian's. He just wants to hear his own
At some
voice.
point, the boy's going to have to start sending me money he says I'm with you so much. Boy's going to have to start to send me royalties because this bullshit. This bullshit is just. I'm just right about here with everyone thinking, why do you copy what Geoff says? Or what do you copy what Brian says? Come on, man.
Francesco says, I miss Arnie. Maybe.
Oh,
that's a bit of a diss to Brian there.
Damn, girl.
Imposter syndrome. Okay. I definitely feel it.
Where do you think it comes from?
What it comes from? I think it's that whole thing of almost like social media, seeing what other people are doing. And it is that whole thing. You see other people's best work and you judge your work against other people's best work, which is, it's quite common for not just our industry, any other industry. And it's just, everything is just so visible now. We see I see you, Geoff, you put a lot on Instagram of, you're hustling hard every day. And I'm not. And I think particularly doing this show, before we come on the show, we have what have I been up to this week, to talk about, that. And I think particularly for me, maybe the last, I'd say 6 months or more, my foot has completely come off the gas. At the moment, there are weeks where I'm lucky if I get one day in the shop. So then to come on a show like this, where I know there are, certainly far more talented people than me listening, and speaking with you two guys as well, who are, another league. Imposter syndrome, I certainly do get it. But, I get it with everything I do. It's not just with knife making. I get it with music. You hear other people. And I criticize myself very badly with everything, And I think that's maybe a good thing to have. It shows that you give a shit, maybe that's a good thing. But where it comes from, I'd say personally, I just think that everybody else is so visible. Yeah, we're sort of bombarded with everybody else's stuff. So it's easy to judge your own or judge your output by everybody else's. But I'm sure imposter syndrome existed way before social media, and that would have been other people in the village who were doing something similar, and you're like, oh, I'm not as good as that, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. So yeah. But I mean, for me, I'd say it's probably social media and seeing other people's sort of output. I mean, like Mareko, top of the tree for what you do. Do you suffer from imposter syndrome? And do you feel sometimes as if, oh Jesus, this isn't up to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a harsh critic of myself and my own work, but I think for me personally, and my experience, I guess, my sense of imposter syndrome comes from maybe some lack of self-confidence in myself. I mean, I know I'm good at what I'm doing. I know that some of the stuff I'm putting out, like other people can't put out or don't know how to put out or whatever. But I don't like walking around pounding my chest and trying to put it in everybody's face. That's just never been my thing. And I think the sense of imposter syndrome kind of comes from like definitely an in-check ego. Because I think if your ego is not in check, you're going to walk around with your dick hanging out thinking you're the hottest shit in town. When in reality, like there are a lot of there are a lot of incredibly talented people out there, and you're fooled to think that you're the very best, because there's just what is the best, quote unquote, changes, and it varies based on people's tastes. There are people who absolutely love whoever's work and don't like my stuff. Like I guarantee there are millions of people, thousands of people at least, who don't like my work, which is fine with me. But I think my sense of imposter syndrome comes from, probably like a lack of self-confidence and an ego that's either properly in check or over in check. Like when Joe Rogan asked me to be on his podcast, and I was like, who the fuck am I? Like I'm nobody. Like I feel like I'm just a stupid monkey mashing on metal, doing my thing. And honestly, I would be happy to do it in anonymity, but having kind of like this visibility coming from all over the place and stuff, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's just often it doesn't feel very good. I don't like it, and I don't know if it's just who I am, or there's weird pressures or stressors I put on myself as a result of it.
You just made another point actually, which I hadn't thought of. So what I was saying with social media, for me, it was like seeing other people's work. But you just said like visibility as well, putting your work out there. And then let's face it, if we're putting work out there, we're putting it out there to be judged, particularly on social media, where when we say judge, we literally mean it as a like button, there's a comment button, it's literally there to be judged. So that's got that. Yeah, that's obviously another player as well, isn't it? I suppose for everybody, unless, you're, like you said, you've got the type of ego where you just do not give a fuck. You just put it out there. Yeah. I mean, Geoff, what are your thoughts on this?
When I tend to hear about imposter syndrome, which is not a true, it's not like a diagnosed thing. It's just like this, one of these new, a word in the past 5 or 6 years in regards to how people feel that they don't deserve to be where they are. And I believe that a lot of it comes from our heightened awareness of unreasonable criticism online. And I think that there are times where you read things that people say. I feel like there is such a disconnect with people and how they interact with other people online, that because you're interacting with a screen or they're interacting with a phone, you lose a degree of the true humanity of who we're dealing with person face to face. And I think that you end up, there's this kind of what's called the uncontrolled id, which is like you're just out of control and you're saying whatever comes to your mouth, you just say. Like there are knife makers out there who just go out of their way to say whatever the fuck they want, and it's generally unnecessary, honestly. So a lot of criticism can be helpful, some criticism can't be helpful, some criticism might be helpful, but a lot of times there's such a huge dark cloud of, I don't like to use the word hate, or be honest with you. I think it just forgives a person who's trying to connect with other people. I feel like people who are they have a little bit of, they're disassociated with humanity to a certain degree, and they say what they say. So we're aware of this heightened state of negativity. And then if there are, like on YouTube videos, like all you YouTubers out there listening to you, fucking God bless you, because I've seen some of the things that people say, and it's just it's unnecessary. Unnecessary is the right word. And you become aware of, even Alex Steele, when I was talking to him on Full Blast, he's just like, I'm aware, I read what they say and it hurts my feelings. That's what he said. It hurts my feelings. So you're completely aware of the potential. Not to mention, I was just talking to Steve Schwarzer on the Full Blast podcast, and he was talking about how when he first,
we need some sort of like a bell every time you mention Full Blast. I need to play like an alarm button.
Listen, you should
remember
think
the Nick
about
Wheeler alarm we used to have. Whenever we said Nick Wheeler, we'd have an alarm playing.
I see Full Blast is the little brother show to this, where I can get in knife makers and other people, and we talk about who they are instead of what they have.
I'm winding you up, Jeffrey. And in fact,
Steve thought it was fucking Knife Talk. If you look at his stories, he thought it was Knife Talk. So be fucking happy. He wrote I was on Knife Talk. I called him twice. I'm like, Steve, it was full blast. Come on, man.
But just to sort of, whilst we're on the subject, that was an amazing interview you did with Steve today. And so, yeah, Full Blast was released today, where Geoff interviewed Steve Schwartzer, which we did on Knife Talk. But Geoff went into more sort of detail, I suppose. And what an amazing life that guy's had. Jeez.
It's crazy. It's totally crazy. And I'm grateful to two things. One is I spent a lot of time helping him get good audio. He bought a mic for this one because he gets on these and he can't hear anything and it sounds like shit. And I needed the full Texas, Florida accent and stuff like that. And then thanks to you once again for your insane edits. I can't say enough. I know sometimes people's connections crap out, and I hate asking Craig to splice these connections. I know where the connections are, and I still can't find them. You're a goddamn genius. So once again, thank you for that. So, but the interesting thing about what Steve was saying is he was making fillet knives cutting out of a saw or something like that. And then he just thought he was hot shit. And then he got to meet this knife maker and he was just like, I'm going to show this guy how it is. And this guy was just like pulled out this folder and, Steve rolled his knives back up and threw them back in the truck because it was just like, that was an imposter syndrome. That was like old school imposter syndrome before like social media.
Yeah.
It is I find it to be very interesting,
Yeah.
And
I'm just looking
mostly
through the
welders
chat.
get it too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the welding world on Instagram is full of comment. Just looking at the comments here in the chat we've got. So Ben Stark, I think a reasonable level of imposter syndrome is healthy since it makes you strive to improve yourself. You just have to still be confident in what you do and don't let it take over. Very true. Moonshadow Forge has said, fake it till you make it. But then humility is key for me.
I like fake it till you make it. I don't. You got to do whatever it takes. I mean, that's what Steve said at the end. Is you'd have to be not afraid to take chances. Unfortunately, when you say fake it till you make it, it always sounds like you're trying to pull one over on someone.
There's connotations are there. Is that Walrus Steel? If you aren't feeling imposter syndrome, you aren't growing. And I remember hearing that a few years ago. Somebody said that if you're not embarrassed by the work that you've done sort of 3 years ago, you should be embarrassed. In other words, you're not improving. I had that exactly this week. So I said we played our first gig. I recorded it and then I got home and listened back to it and I was like, fuck it, that was terrible. But it's something to build on, and it's like everything else anything that I think any sort of creative endeavor, if your heart really is into it, you want it to be better, no matter how good it is, So it's that internal struggle. It's not just imposter syndrome with other people. There's always that internal struggle of a maker as well. I believe that, if you really are into it, you always want things to be better.
And to bring it back to this podcast, a few years ago, I was looking at some charts and I thought, we are consistently kicking all the other knife making podcasts' ass. And I said, one day on the podcast, I said, we're the number one knife related podcast on this planet. And I don't know if that's true, but I'm going with it. I am totally going with it. That's Howard Stern coined himself king of all media. And then now everyone calls him king of all media. Yeah. So it was very I just felt like, I don't know. There could be some dude in Russia who's got the number one knife related podcast on this German blessed planet, but now I'm going to say we are. And I'm still going to say we are.
Very good. Very good. Okay, let's hear from another sponsor of ours.
Knife Talk is sponsored by Even Heat, the manufacturers of the finest heat treat ovens
available.
Didn't
we do that one already?
To find your next oven.
No, we did combat.
Oh, sorry. I thought because Brian's in the house, I thought, Brian wants to hear himself. How many times do you want to hear himself? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
As soon as he's heard out the ads, he dials out anyway. It's fine.
Knife Talk is sponsored by Even Heat, the manufacturers of the finest heat treat ovens available. To find your next oven, go to evenheat-kiln.com.
And don't do that. We all want you to have an Even Heat because they are the best kilns you can buy for knife makers. But we can get you a discount. So if you go to knifetalk.net/heat, that will automatically direct you to the Soul Ceramics website, who are distributors of Even Heats. And we'll get you $75 off and free shipping in the US.
I was about to I was about to beat the shit out of Brian because I thought he'd left. And I was about to do my favorite thing, which is when you come onto to the live and you pipe up, and then I feel like you've left, I'm going to make sure you're still there. Yeah. So Brian almost got that. Brian, you better be in this room when we're playing that thing again. If you left, it's over, baby. We're going to get you.
We'll come back in 5 minutes. Let's just check Brian's still here.
Yeah, Brian, you're on the hook now.
Ben Stark's mum would like to say hi to everyone, and that she's working on coming up with ethical dilemmas for us guys.
Yeah, girl. Let's hear it. Ben's mom's got an ethical dilemma for us. I'm all for that.
Okay.
Hey, man. Can I ask?
Well, that's Brian again.
Listen to him.
Listen
to him.
Jesus.
Listen to him.
Hey, man. Can I ask you a question?
Can I ask you a question? The bit of the show where we ask you guys to send in questions, we'll try our best to answer, but we also have some experts in the chat as well that can also help us. And a bunch of people have done via Instagram this week. And if you've got a question for us,
contact us via DM at Knife Talk Podcast on Instagram. It's that easy.
We've got Robo Brian in the house with us today.
God. I mean, he's listening to himself. It's outrageous.
He's probably getting very excited. Yeah.
Do you know what I think? Do you know
what
I
need
think?
To see your hands, Brian. What are you doing?
We don't want to see his hand. I don't want to see anything. I'll bet you he's got these. I'll bet you he's got these drops, and he plays the drops for himself.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
I bet he does. By the way, he's on the Work For It podcast.
He is.
He's all about inspiration, giving you guys something to listen to while you're working it. Oh, not work it. Working it's what he's doing right now.
Exactly.
Ow.
Exactly.
That one's from. Never mind. I was gonna.
You know it. He said. Brigham Kindle. We've had a question from Brigham Kindle. Where are we? What do you consider to be the telltale sign of your style? That's a good question. Geoff, let's start with you. The obvious signs of your style. What would that be?
You know, is interesting because it's changing, but I feel like there are things in some of my work that you can kind of spot and know. Right now, I'm really trying to push towards. The handle of my knives have changed since I first started making the knives, and it's just kind of streamlined into what I like the best. And now that I'm doing these, this kind of like, I'm trying to depart from, there's a lot of people just doing a couple inches of file work, throwing some, colorful handle scales on, and there's a lot of inspiration. Let's just say it. There's a lot of inspiration. So I got to like hightail it into, color lab time, and I'm going to be trying to do more of these asymmetrical, thoughtful colored handles and stuff like that. So hopefully that'll be my telltale sign. But I feel like when you see my knives, you know what they look like. I mean, I think so. When those dirtbag scammers, people see my knives on those websites and then they immediately contact me. They can tell without seeing the name. So
yeah. Mareko, what do you think rather are the telltale signs of a specific style of yours?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, that was key, like to try to distinguish my work from other people's stuff. So one of the first things, actually, honestly, I did was to try, was to push the belly of the handle. So traditionally, the belly of the handle is like right in the middle of the handle. And so I pushed it up towards the bolster area because, in my opinion, the hand, I mean, if you're familiar with chef's knives and have solid knife skills, you're up on the blade, pinching the blade, and that would allow, by pushing the belly up, that would allow the belly of the handle to still kind of be in the palm of your hand when you're holding it in that position, but still be comfortable when you're holding the knife in kind of like a standard kind of hammer grip. And that was one of the first things I did. And then a lot of people started doing that. And then, so I had to start figuring, I guess Damascus has always been like my Damascus and my patterns and like the really high contrasts and, and also just kind of like trying to create patterns that people hadn't seen before or that make people stop and think, even though it's maybe something that's somewhat familiar, there's something different about it that catches their eye and makes them kind of think about it and look at it and also be able, like Geoff was saying, like if somebody's going through a feed, you can see it and you recognize, that's an unusual pattern. Let me look at that closer. That knife was made by Mareko Malmasi, not whoever the fuck this is trying to pretend to be him. So it's always been to try to distinguish my work just so that it has kind of like that across the room quality where you could see it from across the kitchen and recognize it immediately. If you know what you're looking at, you could recognize it as a Mareko Malmasi knife rather than it looks custom. I don't know who made it though, kind of situation. And then it was the S grind after that. And then a lot of people start picking that up and doing that. And so I think ultimately it's always going to be and then the faceted handles was also another way I worked to try to distinguish my work from others. But I think ultimately it's always going to be the Damascus patterns that really, Adam Davis just said Japanese cowboy handle. It's always going to be the Damascus that really distinguishes my work and amongst the sea of other knife makers. Hopefully if somebody's just scanning across, that will be something that stands out and looks unusual and draws somebody to it, rather than the sea of kind of ubiquity, I guess.
Yeah no, it makes sense. It's a difficult, I mean, again, we talk about this every week, how difficult it is to make something different to everybody else that is still functional, because that's the main purpose of the knife, to be functional. And I mean, my knives they're all clearly stock removal. So I like to make them as clean as possible. I mean, I know plenty of people put sort of texture on stock removal knives, that kind of thing. That's not my thing. I want mine to be like laser sharp clean, if you know what I mean. And that goes not just with the actual blade and the knife itself, but right through to the packaging and any sort of messaging that I put out. I want everything to be sort of, consistent. So I'd like to think maybe people will look at I don't say the cleanliness of the knife, but I think the simplicity of the knife. They're not fussy at all. So I think maybe people could look at one of my knives and say maybe that was mine. But I don't think mine stand out massively in style to anybody else's.
Which I could pick your knife out of a lineup. It's not your knives are not. I mean, I know you have the spine goes a little bit higher towards the blade, before it drops down. There are telltale signs that I could spot your knife in a lineup.
Yeah. I think other knife makers, maybe so. But I think the filthy public, as I call them, those who aren't knife makers, they're just the general, knife buyer. Which was a joke, by the way.
Never tell these people it was a joke. Scum. Don't tell these people scum.
Maybe not, but I'd say very sort of clean lines, very sort of unfussy clean, because the majority of my knives are culinary knives, and the majority are still going to, with regards to chef knives at least, majority are still going to sort of private individuals in homes, where they may spend, 50, 60 grand on a sleek kitchen, and then they want a sleek knife to go in the kitchen. So that's my thinking. They need to be sleek and unfussy. I suppose that's mine.
It's interesting because in the blacksmithing world, I'm sorry for interrupting. In the blacksmithing world, it's much harder to create your own style, because a lot of the traditional blacksmithing tricks that people are using, and that's what they are, whatever, they're stringing one trick next to another trick next to another trick. And it is hard for a lot of guys to have their own style. I mean, you look at Peter Brasnick's, that's Fireforge, he's got his own style. You look at Pat Quinn and those on the Carbondale guys, they have a specific style. But a lot of guys are, I'm finding when I look at bottle openers people are making, stick turners people are making, twists that they're doing, they're not able to create a style that's theirs and theirs alone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It is difficult. I mean, I said function needs to be the main thing, and there's no optimal style for function, but there's certain parameters that we all sort of need to sort of work within, and finding, these little flares and so on within those parameters can be difficult. But,
I was interrupting you, Mareko. What were you going to say?
I don't know. I lost it.
Okay. Well, I was going to say that with the blacksmithing especially, there is this difficulty, and the difference between, knife makers are a little bit different than blacksmiths, because with blacksmithing, it's hard for people to kind of break out. It is hard because, especially when you're not taking classes, you're not learning, and you're not doing as much. The one thing that creates your style, and I'm looking at both of you and the people in the chat, it's always showing your receipts. It's always the evolution of making changes along the way. I said before that my handles changed, and the reason my handles changed is because I started to not like it. And then one woman came in and she said, I got small hands. I want you to make small hands. And I realized I like that. And I have receipts to all the decisions that I've made along the way, including
Geoff, sorry. Why do you like women with small hands?
This customer came in. I told you this goddamn story a long time ago. This customer came in. She was obnoxious, and she said, I want to come in because I have small hands. I'm like, okay, great. Let's see. Okay, why do you not? I'll make your handle smaller. She goes, I need to feel it. So she came in. I said, put up your hand. I said, your hand is a normal size. Why did you come here? But I ended up making the handle much smaller than I used to. And these are what I'm getting to is you find that when you're creating a style, you're coming from, like, as my wife refers to it, as jumping from lily pad to lily pad. And each lily pad is an evolution. And I think that when it comes to finding your own style, it's investigating the things that you like about what you're doing and the things that you want to change to create your own style, instead of saying, hey, I can do that twist. Hey, I can do that thing. Let me put them both together and I'll just do the same thing. It's finding a voice. It's finding your voice. I can read a book into this microphone, but that doesn't mean I said it, is I'm reading it. So that's the one thing, especially with podcasters, especially with knife makers, especially with blacksmiths, you can find a style, but it has to do with a lot of work and finding receipts and looking at the receipts. This is where this came from. This is where this came from, Yeah.
So no, it makes perfect sense.
There you go.
Craig.
There we go.
I remembered what
attaboy.
What I was going to say. So when Craig was talking about how his knives have a very clean, simple, modern look, I started visualizing like what kind of home that would go into, because he was kind of started talking about, more modern homes and very sleek and clean, very simple kitchen or simple looking. Anyways, I was trying to visualize my own knife in one of those kitchens, and I feel like it wouldn't look right. Like maybe somebody would like the knife, but I don't think they would want it out on display in the counter. But I could see Craig's knives and the clean, sleek style that he goes for being more suitable kind of in that environment. But obviously there are a lot of eclectic buyers out there too, who probably have my work, Craig's work, and Geoff's work,
I was wondering whether, Geoff made the point of blacksmiths, it's easier for them to sort of differentiate in style because there's so many different techniques that they can use.
No, it's not easier. It's harder.
Oh, sorry. Okay, harder. But a lot of blacksmiths maybe go to a school to learn technical stuff. Could you guys guess? Have you guys seen work and you would then know who their teacher was because they're doing certain techniques that that person may be famous for? So then their students who have learned those same techniques would then go and do the same thing. Is that a common thing in blacksmiths?
Yes.
It's like a lineage.
Well, and there's a question that's going to come up that we can actually. I'm going to read this question, and then we'll answer this. I'm going to read this next question by Robert Bozich. It fits right in. But when you take any kind of class, the funny thing is I don't know who I was talking to, and I was talking to Ilya. We were talking about art teachers, and I was saying that my sculpture teacher kind of put me in a bad spot because I was influenced by his style. His style dictated a lot of the stuff that I was doing because I just didn't know any better. So I was learning from a specific sculptor that had more whimsical tastes and more colorful stuff and maybe less attention to detail or attention to, reality and more kind of whimsical pop arty. And that probably influenced my work in terms of my direction. It was quite a departure from what my father was doing, who was my ultimate influence in the beginning. So you are influenced by your teachers. And I know that in regards to, there's criticism towards Uri Hoffe, my friend and teacher. And when I expressed that fact, I'm like, look, you can learn different techniques from other people, but you're at the, you take a class from someone, and if this particular technique influences you, that's just the way it is. It's like, that's part of how teaching works, is you're influenced by your teachers. So yes, there are different branches where you learn different techniques from different teachers, and then that technique influences you afterwards,
Yeah. And I suppose that's how things get passed down through generations and so on, Yes,
but that's what makes things controversial. I was when we were in Amsterdam and we went to go see Rembrandt's house, it was fascinating because the old school way of teaching art was you would send your kid to an artist, but they had to be at a certain level. And then once they got to the teacher, Rembrandt forced his students to learn how to paint his paintings, and that's it. And it was like, you are going to basically copy my work to the point where I'm going to sell your work as my work. And it was interesting because it wasn't about self-expression. It was about, I want you to mimic what I fucking do. Wow. And there are a lot of people who do that. And a lot of people who say, this is the way to do it, and this is how you're going to do it. So it is interesting how teachers do affect, the outcome. And it's up to the student. And unfortunately, if you're very young and impressionable, it becomes hard,
Yeah.
Okay,
like cool.
Pardon me?
I said it sounds like my history a little bit.
You can't fight what you've learned, unless you have if you have the wherewithal to understand. Okay, I didn't know. I thought that Uri Hoffi was the only goddamn blacksmith on the planet when I learned from him 15 years ago. I had no idea that there were other teachers teaching other shit. Like, I was just like, this is the fucking dude. I had no idea that there were other hammer makers besides Uri Hoffi. I was like, everything else looked like some, claw hammer. So, it's just, what you know until you see something different. You can't fight what you don't know, and you just don't know it. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's move on. Mareko, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, we got one here from the Blade Maker. He says, I got a question. How do I remove someone's laser engraved initials from a knife? Customer turned out to be an asshole, and I'd rather sell it for half the price than have him get the knife. P.S. I know sanding is the way to go, but it'll be a bitch because the initials are engraved pretty deep. What do you guys think?
I suppose there's two ways. There's one of taking down material so that so it goes, as you say, sanding off, grinding it off. But then obviously, if it's a finished blade, which it probably is, if it's been laser engraved, you'd laser engrave at the end. You're then obviously changing the knife and the geometry of the knife, so that could be an issue, particularly if it's deep. The other way is to get creative. If you've got the laser yourself and you've done the lasering, we've all seen these terrible tattoo cover-ups. I love Nicole, and all of a sudden it reads somebody else's name, his wife's name instead. We've all seen those kinds of things. So I don't know, maybe you could come up with some sort of geometric pattern that could help to sort of remove those initials from it. I think they're the only two ways. You either grind it off or you try and cover it up with other lasers, with other patterns within a pattern. Brian's just said actually in the chat, Brian from Housework, cover up like a tattoo. Exactly. Yeah.
He's piping in every 5 minutes just to make sure that we know that he's there. I appreciate that, Brian. Every 5 minutes, you got to write something. Could
be a bot. Who knows?
Oh, bot. Yeah.
I mean, he could try to get creative too and just come up with an acronym for whatever those initials are. This is the such and such blade.
Yeah.
And then these are the initials for that. I don't know. But
drill a hole. Griffith's handmade knives has just said in the chat.
Don't read what Eric Carnevale wrote. That was just unnecessary. But fine. Listen, here's here's the most important thing. When you have to regrind it, you have to be very aware of how far you can go if you're going to hand sand the knife, because you can start to get in a lot of trouble if you go right up to if you have a plunge line. You want to make sure that you're not jumping the plunge line and going into the bolster. You got to be real careful, because you have to really almost feather it, because you want to really kind of make that transition easy. Because if you just get some gouge towards the plunge line, or towards the bolster, it becomes, I mean, if it was Mareko's knife, it wouldn't be as hard. If you had like a bolster that was like a steel bolster, maybe you could kind of like hit it with, it's not as hard. But if you like a wooden bolster, it becomes a little bit more tricky because you just don't want to bump into it. And I would think that the move would be is you just got to be really careful in regards to how far you're going to go with that belt, because if it's high up on the edge, if it's high up towards the tip, you might be able to just get it up and down with the belt grinder, but with the contact wheel. But you're still going to have to feather it in. The most important thing is feathering it in. Like I wouldn't like start it with a 36 grit belt. I would do easy passive with something light and just try to make sure that you don't have any wobble, because to get rid of it, it becomes harder if you give yourself extra gouges or dips.
Yeah.
And
you got to assume, this is a hardened blade, obviously,
right,
because the laser is done at the end. So you're going to want good sandpaper. If you're going to be doing that, you're going to need the best sandpaper that you could possibly find. And that's going to be from Rhino Wet. Rhino Wet make the best paper for hand sanding. There's no two ways about it. They got all the grits you could ever possibly need. It's made by Indasa, which are actually based in Portugal, but for some reason their Instagram is Indasa USA. But it's the best stuff. It's the best stuff. And we can get you a discount, you lovely listeners. If you go to TexasFarrierSupply.com and put in Knife Talk 10, you can get 10% off your order. And remember, they don't only do Indasa stuff and the Rhino Wet. They also do lots of other stuff for knife makers. So go take a look. TexasFarrierSupply.com. Look in the knife making section that they have, and they've got all sorts of stuff. And you can get 10% off all of it by using Knife Talk 10.
And they're in New Jersey. They're not too far from John Ariani, Sunset Forge. He's actually, ended up in the driveway and honked the horn a couple times. I don't think they ever drive through. Yeah, I took a picture from there. And the next question comes from, and I have listener feedback and I have dilemmas, but I already pre-talked about Robert's. I want to read Robert's question because it's interesting.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Robert Bosich says, I'm an amateur YouTube educated blacksmith/bladesmith. I make barbecue tools and grill cleavers and small axes. I've heard you talk about learning from a pro / taking classes. What are some good choices, and how do you choose a class to learn the basics to intermediate without having to relearn half of what I've already learned? I'm at a loss on how to choose, but I want to learn the basics to help me be a better blacksmith / bladesmith. Love you guys, and the podcast is part of my life. The humor, the education, it helps in my head. I've listened forever, and every single one is something for me. Thanks, guys. You are truly appreciated. All right, that wasn't me, Robert. That was Craig.
Okay, I'll jump in first with this because I think, and we've done it in the past as well. We give people shit for sort of I learned this on YouTube, and we'll take a crack at it. But I think there's huge value in that, and I think these days people do learn differently of how they learn traditionally, and I think YouTube is a big part of that. But I think the trouble is, particularly in doing what we're doing, as I say, YouTube is an amazing resource for us all. But the trouble can be if you're sort of maybe mix and matching stuff. You're learning how to do something from one guy and something from another guy, and this may not sort of work cohesively as one. And this is exactly what I did because I'm very remote here and I didn't really have people that I could go to. So when I did finally go and see people, it was just like, oh wow, it was almost relearning some stuff. But I think, like anything that's out there on the internet, the quality can vary. And if you don't have that sort of basic understanding of maybe what's good and what's bad, you could be copying bad techniques or doing things which maybe aren't the best. So yeah, I think I know you guys are immediately going to jump in now and say go see it, go to a class, and I completely agree with you. But I think in the past maybe we've bashed it quite hard. People who are they've learned via YouTube, and I've learned so many skills via YouTube, so many. But yeah, I think the it's like anything on the internet. We've all got a mad auntie who's on the internet and they'll read something and they believe it and they're spouting up on Facebook about all this stuff. It's just like, well, no, the problem is really the source you've got the information isn't a reliable source. And I think determining what is a reliable source is important. And maybe you don't know that at the beginning of your career. So that's the danger. So maybe then taking a course, finding out the basics and then maybe using YouTube as an extra resource would be the way to go. But Mareko, what are you thinking?
I mean, I think, yeah, learning the key. I mean, you like the watching the videos and stuff and the YouTube stuff. It's a lot of it is broad strokes. It's hard to get into real deep detail and nuance because time is an issue, and also camera angles or capabilities of the cameras might be an issue, and so it is really key to get working with somebody in person if you can, in a healthful and safe way. Obviously, right now things are kind of crazy and awkward for that, but there are people teaching and offering classes and lessons all over the place. I think there are still hammer-ins going on. If you can get to a hammer-in, if you not necessarily go there to learn, but to potentially network and find people there that are teaching and offering courses. I feel like I'm surprised actually that there isn't kind of more like the American Bladesmith Society doesn't have more of a database that has basically a listing of different makers, master smiths and journeyman smiths and whoever, who offer courses, who offer lessons in various things. I mean, we know plenty of makers like Jason Knight who offer online courses, but again, it's great for broad strokes, but when you need that like kind of over your shoulder coaching, where are you going to find that? And you only know from just kind of, I mean, forums actually might be a great place. So blade forums. There's also Bladesmith forums, who originally was started by Don Fogg. There's, God, those are like, honestly, those are the only two I can really think of off the top of my head, but those are places. And there's all kinds of groups. Actually, honestly, on Facebook is a great place to get answers. Especially what is it, the knife maker's whiteboard is where anybody from very experienced, like I just asked a question on there the other day when I first was starting out my forging or my squaring dies, to the complete novice hasn't even touched a hammer before. You can ask questions, and I think that might also be a great place to figure out and where you like let people know, I'm in Olympia, Washington, and I'm looking for a knife making course. Who could teach? And I actually know a couple guys in the area here who offer classes. And so somebody's going to know, especially in the community, like a lot of people know each other and network. And especially if you are very more kind of a lot more specific about your region and where you're at and where you're trying to do your lessons, then somebody's going to be able to help point you in the right direction, or point you to somebody who can help point you in the right direction.
Yeah. I think what Robert was saying is he's worried that he's going to pick a class that's, that he thinks is intermediate and it's a beginner class. And maybe how does he gauge where he is in the classes that he should be taking? And I know this because I know that a lot of guys who try to get into the Center for Metal Arts classes for like Nick Langer or Salem Straub that's going on right now. And they try to get into these intermediate classes, and what happens is Pat will say, or a hammer making class. A lot of guys want to get into a hammer making class. And then Pat will say, you got to take these basic courses first. And a lot of these guys are just like, well, I don't fucking need that. But you do. So my suggestion is always, I've actually, when I first started at the Center for Metal Arts and I was the assistant to Uri Hoffy, I ended up taking the same basic class. I think I took it 3 times. And each time I learned something more. I definitely, from the first time I took it, the second time I took it, and the third time I took it, I always learned something. It was efficiency or speed. So if you don't want to take a beginner class, like I'm actually going to be teaching, I haven't really announced yet because you have to, but in October, I'm going to be doing an introductory blacksmith class at the Dragon's Breath Forge. And it's going to be tongs and bottle openers. And one day we're going to haul ass, tongs and bottle openers. And some people might say, well, I don't want to do an introductory class. But it's going to be, you're going to learn so much. The people who've taken the tong making classes that I've taught are just like, maybe it's not a knife, but they're going to learn so much in regards to, the basics that translate over to other things. I think that you shouldn't I think that you should take as many classes as you can if you can, if you find a place, even if you think, well, I don't want to make scrolls or I don't want to do that. But if you want to learn hammer control, you might want to take basic classes, especially basic classes from Pat Quinn is going to be a lot different from taking classes from Nick Rossi, beginner classes. So it's like you have to almost check your ego and say, okay, just because I watch Alex Steele doesn't mean I'm ready to go on to Forge and Fire. I think there's nothing that's too big. It's not like you're going to be going to kindergarten all of a sudden. Like you're ready for the 12th grade and you got to go back to kindergarten. It's not, blacksmithing isn't really like that. But with that said, the NEB is having a fall meet in October. Go to the NEB website. Ziva Gottlieb's going to be there. Maker Camp is going to be in October, late October. And there's going to be a lot of stuff there. There are things that are happening. I know that our friend Nate Zimmerman's eating snacks up at the New England School of Metalwork. Boy, all he does is eat snacks at the New England School of Metalwork. He traveled all the way from Milwaukee, and all he does is eat during the classes. It's like, come on, man, no snacks in the shop. But there's tons of classes being taught. I know the Center for Metal Arts. I know all these guys. And join Abana. If you join Abana and join the NEB, they're great resources, and the ABS, even if you're not around, they have newspapers or magazines with periodicals and places you can take classes that can be taught.
Yeah.
Right.
Mareko, Francesco Mucci, has asked in the chat about the Facebook group that you mentioned again.
Yeah, so the Facebook group is Knife Makers Whiteboard on Facebook. And then to also kind of address, I guess, his concern, Robert's concern, if you do end up taking a course directly from one individual in their shop, I think before you even get going, I guarantee, I would hope that they would ask, what's your experience? What are you hoping to learn? So that they can kind of skip over some of that stuff so you're not wasting time. But I also think, like what Geoff was saying, how he took that introductory course with Uri Hafi like 3 times. I think part of it too is, part of all of this is being able to kind of humble yourself, check your ego at the door, and be willing to learn something, even if you think you've heard it before. Like Geoff said, you're gonna hear something else new. You're gonna catch something or pick something up that's different that can help you.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be more efficient, or you're going to learn your strokes better. Or you're going to learn, there's a million different, it's not like going to, that's the problem with fucking YouTube. I mean, I know you didn't want to bash YouTube, but YouTube is like learning how to lift weights online. Like you don't have a guy there saying you're standing up, you're standing wrong. Yeah. They're not telling you how to stand. They're not telling you how to, you're swinging your arm wrong. Why do you have all of a sudden a tennis elbow? Why do you have tennis elbow? There's all sorts of things that, there's no, as Nick Rossi said to me, there's no better substitution for in-person learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Joel Shepard says in the chat, blacksmithing classes are way easier to learn when you're not struggling / falling behind. Good call. Don't take off more than you can chew. Good call.
Okay, let's do some of these dilemmas you've got. But just while you're queuing that up for us, I want to talk about our Dharma Steel knife of the week. And this is from California Custom Knives. Damn. On Instagram. It's California_custom_knives. And some beautiful, beautiful knives, which are I got to say, the presentation on these knives is incredible as well. No dodgy hand picks, all lit very well, and they really show the beauty of that Dharma steel blade. So yeah, go take a look. It is, Don Andrade. Yes. So go take a look. California_custom_knives. Some beautiful, beautiful knives. But even if you just want tips on how to take some great photos of knives, that's the place to go. But that's a Dharma Steel knife. If you want to get yourself some Dharma Steel, you can log into the site. You can create an account at Dharma Steel, and if you use Knife Talk 10, you can get 10% off, which can be a big, big chunk of money. So go do that. And there will actually be another Dharma Steel Chef Invitational coming up soon, which we'll be involved in some way. We're not quite sure how yet, but we're certainly going to be involved in some way. So, go take a look. California_custom knives. Some beautiful, beautiful knives.
I have a question for that Dharma Steel Invitational. How can I submit a knife without having to do a booth and without saying to the listeners, vote for me? How do I do it fair?
Fair.
How do I do it? So I don't want to do another booth. I'm not going to do a separate booth. I want to fuck around with you guys. And we had PS. The Damas Steel Invitational Show is one of the fucking great shows of 2021.
It was, yeah, it was a great show. Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah,
it was one of our highlight shows. It was so much fun. I don't want to have a booth and have to talk to these ham and eggers. I ain't interested. I want to fuck around with you guys, but I might want to put a knife in. How do I do it? We got to figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I don't know, but if you've made a knife with Damas Steel, which you're very proud of, tag them, tag us. And I'm sure if we're not going to do it before the show, when we do the show, I'm sure we're going to have lots of knives that we'll be showing as well and telling people all about. But yeah, we can certainly find out more about how you can get involved with the Chef Invitational, because I know they want as many people involved as possible. They're doing a great thing, and it's all free as well what they're doing, so it's a great thing. Okay, Geoff, this is the bit that I've been really looking forward to. I really enjoy this part of the show now. It's the new part of the show. It's the new part of the show. Jeffrey.
So now I'm on the hook for this. Is actually the most work I put together this show. By the way, somebody in the listener, when we get to listener feedback, there's some good things in that one too. But Tough Scenarios become like a real like head scratcher. I got to spend at least one dog walk trying to figure out what I'm going to say. But sometimes the listeners come up with good ones. Guys, if you want to submit your DM your tough scenarios, please do, but refrain from the weird sex stuff. Like it's so lowbrow. I'm just so not. I do not want to talk to all of you guys in regards to any kind of sex stuff. I just like, you're pigs. I don't want it. And that's the end of that. So There you go. So this one is tough scenarios, and then we're all going to answer honestly and hopefully not phony. But the phony's funny too, so that's fine. So we're going to do so. Here's a warm up. This is from Jake Norris, who is an earner. I'm referring to the people who consistently do good ones as earners. Jake Norris is an earner. And here's your tough situation. You take a trip to the beach with the other two members of the Knife Talk podcast. So the three of us are on a beach trip. So we're getting sexual. Jake, what are you doing to me? And the other two decide to go for a swim, and they get caught in the current. You're a good swimmer, and you have to save one. Who do you save? Who are you going to save, guys? So we're all in this. We're all in this together. And,
oh boy,
one of us might have had too much to drink, maybe. I think.
Three of us are there. Two of you get into trouble in a tough current.
Right.
You're grown men on a beach. Come on. I mean, you're grown men on a beach.
So you're going to be
swept out to the tide. Swept out in the tide. They always do say if people are being swept out in the tide, the worst thing you can do is go and try and rescue them. You need to phone the Coast Guard and get them out. Otherwise, they could be two of us in trouble.
This is your bit to win. You win this fucker every week. You get this one every week. I thought you were going to pick one of us. You're like, fuck you both. I'm going to drink my Mai Tai on the beach.
No, I'd be very concerned. I'd be first on the phone to the Coast Guard. But if there's a tough situation, I'm
DMing our wives. I think there's something wrong with the boys.
Yeah, I'm not the strongest swinger.
You sure about that?
Thank God.
I enjoy swinging. I'm not the strongest swinger. No, no, I'm not the strongest swimmer anyway. Yeah, I think
we're both dead. Mareko, we're both dead. He's got nothing for us, Mareko. He got nothing for us.
I need to call it the professionals, I think. I think that's what I'm good.
Well, the scenario is that
what
you
are
doing in this scenario, you're a strong swimmer, right?
Let's just answer the question. I mean, maybe you got like some pool floaties on your arms. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, all of a sudden, it's like I'm not a good swimmer. You're both dead. I mean, come on. I mean,
Ah, man, I think I'd have to save Craig.
I don't blame you.
He's the one that would be easier for me to swim back.
Is it because maybe he'd probably be a little bit more, if he had been drinking, he'll be a little bit more like docile in the water. So it's like less drowning.
Well,
he's not going to be flailing and grabbing you and like saving. He's going to be just like kind of like, he's going to be like a sack of potatoes and it'll be an easier save. I don't blame you for that. I would think so.
Thank you for describing my beach body as a sack of potatoes.
No, but I'm assuming you're like 3 sheets to the wind. Maybe you're like your pool floaty kind of started to fizzle in the water, and you're all of a sudden you're far out there, and you're inflatable inner tube that's losing its like juice, and you're
No,
like,
I think I mean, Mareko and I, we've been on holiday a few times anyway. We're very good buddies. But you didn't know that, did you? Oh, right, Geoff didn't know Mareko about our beach trips.
Regardless, Mareko also noted.
Yeah.
Mareko also noticed that you're a poor swimmer, so he's actually going for you because you need it. You're drunk and you can't swim. You're going for you.
But in this scenario, both the strugglers need the help. I don't know. I think if Geoff, I'm gonna answer for you, Geoff. If Geoff had to pick one of us, I would hope that he would pick Craig too, because by the time you get out there, I'm probably already under and I'm gone. So you gotta get Craig. And I weigh 250 pounds, and you want to be dragging my ass back out of the water.
Listen, peace and love. I am going to go for Craig, but not for the reason you said. You can't edit and put up my podcast. That's the reason why. I mean, that's
where my value lie. Get it? Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, it's Thursday afternoon, and he hasn't edited my podcast yet. I better go save his ass.
I appreciate the honesty. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm definitely now that I think about it, maybe Craig. Now that I think about it, I think Craig needs the save more than Mareko, because Mareko's might be a better swimmer. Now that you said that you're a bad swimmer. All right, that was the warm up. We're all fooling around. Okay. Okay. You've designed a knife on your computer. You have it laser jet cut, laser water jet cut, whatever. You have it drilled, beveled, heat treated, finished. The handles put on, finished, done. You didn't lay a finger on it. Shows up to your house in a pallet. Do you consider that you made it?
Hell no.
Really? If you don't say I make knives and this is what I make?
You could say I designed it. I don't think you could say you made it. Yeah, you designed the knife. That's all you've done there, really, isn't it? There's no other.
So you're not a knife maker, you're a knife designer?
I'd say you're a knife designer. Yeah, I'd say so. I think it'd be very disingenuous to try and pass that off. And I mean, depending where it's been made, whether people, my instant thought then was maybe it was made in China and you had it made there, but to a cost. So my initial thought was, people would know maybe. Particularly if you're asking for a premium for this, people would know anyway. But I'd say no. I mean, you're legitimately a knife designer, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's completely fine. Market it as a knife that you've designed. There's not a problem with that. But no, I certainly wouldn't say I'd made it as a. Yeah, that would be a strange thing to do.
I think if you're completely hands off, then yeah, you're a knife designer. I mean, honestly, I don't even know why it's coming to you. Usually,
what do you mean why it's coming?
Yeah, you drop ship that thing. Yeah,
you send it to Amazon, and then they handle all the shipping from there, and you sell all your sales on Amazon. I think I'm too anal retentive though. I'd have to have final eyes, and probably would be fixing all kinds of shit on it and resharpening them and stuff. So I think if that was the case, you could at least say hand finished. But yeah, I still think you couldn't say handmade or made by me. It would still be designed by me and hand finished.
And
that's about as far as you could go.
What kind of psychopath would want to not do the fun stuff, but only then do the shitty bit, which is the shipping, the bit that causes all the problems? Well, you need to be a true psychopath to be doing that.
This came from, I was listening to the Handmade podcast, and old man Paul Pinto, for some reason, when people go through puberty, a lot of people grow body hair. Apparently, when he went through puberty, he grew experience, because this 21-year-old seems to know everything about everything. I love you, Paul, and I know I'm gonna come on your podcast at some point. But they were talking about art, and he and Chris were talking about, because Chris Zepp did a lot of work with artists and helping build art, and I've done that too, where I've helped fabricate art for other artists, and it made me think about guys like Jeff Koons, or these famous artists, Damien Hirst, who have a crew, and he's not touching. Or you want to talk about glass artists, Dale Chihuly, he has a crew of guys, And then they signed their names to it. And then the guys were basically saying, well, if they don't know how to do it, or they don't touch it, then it shouldn't be, their name shouldn't be on it, or something along those lines. But it was interesting to me because I believe that if you are an artist and you have the ability to have assistants, and you have your assistants doing certain things, and if they're taking away from what you have to do, but it's your vision, that's still your art. I believe that a lot of makers don't like sculptors who have assistants because they think that because you're having other people make your stuff, it's not really yours. Damien Hirst didn't take that shark and shove him in a tank full of formaldehyde. He had like dudes.
Well, I think the point is he has a claim to.
Yes, he has. His name's. It's his show.
It's his show, and the whole thing is the concept. That's the concept that gets you thinking, there, isn't it? It's not it's not his hand rubbed finish. If you put
but it's his show. You're going to a Damien Hirst show. You're not going to a Damien Hirst assistant show. Like I know.
Yeah, okay.
There are certain that
you want more. Are you talking more like branding then, like the reputation in the name?
I'm just saying that when you go to a Jeff Koons show, he didn't touch any of it. It's still a Jeff Koons show. So can we, when at some point, because a lot of us think we're artists, can we at some point think that there's a problem with that? And I don't have a problem with it. I know that there are guys like Pat Quinn, when he makes hammers with other blacksmiths, he has everyone's touch mark who worked on it, put their touch mark on it, which I appreciate. And I know that there are other artists. I think some old glassblower that I knew who passed away, Stephen Ralph Powell, used to like put the names of the assistants who helped because it was a performative piece.
Yeah.
But I do believe that like you're watching Dale or you're watching a Wolfgang on Disney Plus, which I strongly suggest. I mean, Wolfgang Puck, he ain't cooking anymore, but I mean, it's still his restaurant.
Yeah, I was going to give that example of a famous chef. They may have multiple restaurants. They're not cooking any of the covers there. They've got people in, but they've been trained under that chef. I suppose not always, anyway. I suppose, but I suppose the closest that I can think of in the sort of maker space would be maybe Grants Force Brooks axes. There's a team of people there who are making them, but they are handmade still, so they are, the individual maker will then put a maker's mark on, as well as the brand, which is the Grants Force Brooks. But I think it all comes down to the vocabulary that you're using to ultimately try and sell these knives. So if you are then saying that if you're saying it's a handmade knife, you're lying. If you just
does it matter?
I think it matters. Yeah, of course it matters.
But if it's handmade, but it's not your hand,
but
you've got to still handmade.
Yeah, you've got to assume.
Tough scenarios, Craig. Come on, baby.
Everything is handmade if you think of it. In some way. But I think if you're sticking your name on it, I think you need to be honest. But the point is, I don't think there's any problem in saying it was designed by me. But we all know that a story will sell a knife as well, and people want to know the story of how you made it and all that kind of thing. And if you haven't got that sort of breadth of knowledge, or not only the breadth of knowledge, but the insight into how it was made, you're being a bit disingenuous, maybe. Grateful Knives, just in the chat there. What about Bob Kramer? Mareko was doing a lot of the processes when he was working for Bob, and I don't think Bob tried to hide that in any way. But it's still a Bob Kramer knife, which is almost the brand name. Then when you get to a certain size and you're using other people to help you, you're not necessarily putting your touch mark on it to say that you've made it. You're putting your brand name on it, and I think as long as you're being honest about that in the the story that tell you, whether it's on your website or whatever it may be, I don't really see a problem with it.
Do you know the company Leatherman?
Yes.
Some people call it Leatherman. I call it Leatherman. Yeah. Leatherman is
Spider-Man's cow brother. Yeah.
Spiderman. I saw an ad once years ago on Instagram from them saying that these knives are the buttons are hand touched to make the knives.
The buttons are hand touched.
Yeah. There's a person touching the buttons to make the knives. Like it's this real far stretch from handmade. It was like, there's actually a person putting this thing in and pressing the button and it's going. You know, it's like not fully automated, but it was like this real strong stretch in terms of like trying to create this, Leatherman's artisanal. I thought it was very funny.
Yeah.
It was unnecessary too.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to the next dilemma?
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, Geoff, you said you don't have an issue with it. Like, and I guess I want to understand that more. So if I was your shop monkey and I was cutting out the blades and I was primary grinding them for heat treat or whatever, post grinding, drilling holes, setting up handle scales, gluing up handles, doing handle sculpting.
Okay.
Basically doing maybe everything, or even if you train me on heat treat.
Okay.
Probably one of the hardest things to pass off to somebody is like finish grinding, right? And sharpening.
Okay.
If I'm doing everything but like finish grinding and sharpening, but your name goes on it, you still feel good about that. And
I'm not saying feel good about it, but it's still my knife. If I'm paying you and I'm teaching you how I want it done and you're doing it the way I teach you how to do it, my name goes on it, yours doesn't.
Okay.
But I'm not saying I have a specific line right now. But at the same time, in regards to a question on a podcast, I think it's a fascinating question because I think it's interesting. But like when I had Carl here, I couldn't get him to do anything other than hand sand. I wouldn't put on Carl Child's hand sanding. I taught him the technique, how I want it done, and he replicated that technique. He didn't make that knife.
So the human, having a human assistant, to me, it sounds like you consider it kind of on par with like automation in a way. So if you were to have all of that work done out of house by people, companies that could have an automated machinery system set up, CNC routers for the handle scales, it's basically it's all that kind of automation, but it's a human being in your shop.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't say, by the way, blades laser or hydro cut by water jet by so and so and CNC router by no.
Why?
It would still be your design. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I'm just trying to wrap my head
around.
No.
I think that when I'm paying if I paid someone and I trained them exactly how to do absolutely everything, and they were still an employee of mine, they were doing my techniques, and they did the whole thing stem to stern, it's not their knife, it's my knife.
Right.
Yeah. And I think a bit of a difference there as well between maybe myself and you guys is you guys use your actual names on your blades too. It's fader knives, it's, your more massive fire arts. So I think people will always assume that it was you who did everything on that knife. And maybe if that wasn't the case, maybe if that wasn't communicated correctly, people could maybe then think you've been a bit disingenuous about that, simply because your brand name is your name,
Well, and that brings up a good point for the conversation we've had in the past about whether to use your actual name or not. And I think that's actually a very strong argument for not using your name, really. Because if you do want to, I don't know. I think for me, it would feel better. I guess I would just struggle with with all like having somebody in here doing a bunch of work like I used to do for Bob, and then just putting my name on it. I don't know why. I think I need to mill it over a little bit. But if it was just chopped knives or whatever the fucking Sherwin-Williams knives, I guess that's somebody's name. Whatever, paint can knives. Yeah, I'm saying that because there's a paint can right here. That doesn't mean anything. That's nobody's name. So it's easier to say this is a paint can knife versus this is a Mareko Malmasi or Malmasi Fire Arts knife.
This is a scalability issue because we're talking like we're singular people in our shops, which we are. If you were to make this business bigger, you are going to have some, in order to do volume, you have to figure a way to do volume,
Yeah, for sure.
And we have to stop. Either we're in business or we're hand craftsmen, handcrafted, old whatever. I mean, it's like, what is it gonna? What are we doing? What are you doing? I mean, Liam Hoffman's got a pile of guys.
Right.
What?
I was just gonna say, what if it was your lures? Your lures are all CNC routed out. It's CNC paint.
That's different
somehow,
because that's sculpture. However, if I designed one of my lure sculptures to be CNC'd out, and then I had it painted CNC, and then I used them for a giant installation, and I needed 1,000 of them, and I had a company that could make the 1,000 exactly the way I want it, I made the sculpture because I designed it and I figured it out. I knew exactly what I wanted it to be, and I approved all the steps, and I made it it's still my sculpture.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is semantics and language that you use.
Sure.
And I think it all just boils down to that. If you're open and honest, I see no problem, and there's no shame in being a knife designer because it's a critical part of any knife.
You love it when I do that.
I do. I love it. I love it. But I mean, you mentioned scaling up can be a problem if you're using your personal name. But you know what? If you're going to scale up, you're going to need a good grinder. At least you're going to need a good grinder. And Geoff, if you were to scale up and get another little Jeffrey on site, what would little Jeffrey be using?
Broadbeck Ironworks 2x72 grinder from broadbeckironworks.com. Guys, stop fooling around. It is a great bargain. They make awesome grinders. They save you on shipping because they put a lot of it into flat rate boxes. It's very versatile, horizontal, vertical. It's got all these different attachments. If you say, "Hey, Geoff, but I already got a grinder," well, they have attachments they're gonna fit into your grinder based on the arm that you have. I would definitely go to broadbeckironworks.com, put a promo code Knife Talk 10, and you get yourself some 10% off. 10% off your entire order, and you go get yourself ready for that Mareko platen, that deep dish platen. That might be a better name, by the way. P.S. Deep D, the deep D platen. I think you figured it out. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think it's the deep D. Go get yourself the deep D. Put your name out for the deep D because that's going to be for you. That's going to be the new T-shirt for Broadbeck Ironworks. Come get your Broadbeck Ironwork deep D. You know what I'm saying? Knife Talk 10 for 10% off. Come on, get yourself that deep D.
And Moon, I think it's Moon Shadow Forge, has just done exactly that. Love my new Broadbeck grinder already. He got it this week, or last week rather.
Nice.
Congratulations.
There you go.
Great machine.
I think that's a show. We're hour and 45 minutes. I know
really?
We've got lots of content. We've got lots. We can spill over.
Dang.
Okay. This was our dilemmas. We also have some.
I can read some listener feedback if you want. Wow, that show went fast. We actually talked about shit.
We did. I tell you, listener feedback. Should we save that for the after show?
Okay. Or whatever. We could do sometime. We're gonna have to do an after show. Like
After
that's my
hours.
Next favorite thing. Like it goes off. That's the after show. We do the thing, and it's I've talked sponsored by, and then we have like a secret. So people make sure people are really listening.
This is behind the black curtain stuff. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Whatever
Well, that's a show. That's a show. Anyway, thank you all for listening. It's been a really good show. I'm really liking the direction we're going in as well. We're doing slightly different stuff. I think we answered 2 questions from the filthy public this week, but hey.
P.S. to the filthy public: if I don't read your question, don't ask me why I didn't read your question. We give a lot of fucking content to get through, so just calm yourself.
That's a quick way to not get your question answered.
Well, I mean, I'm customer service, which is annoying, and that's going to read us into our first listener dilemma when we're in the after show.
Right. Okay. Thank you all very much for listening. Again, if you listen to this on a Monday morning, remember we record this on a Friday. You can get involved. It's nice to get people involved in the chat and so on. And we do that on a Friday afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, via YouTube and Facebook. But thank you all for listening, and we shall speak to you all again very soon.
This show is brought to you by The Makery, the podcast network for makers.
I think it's so funny that all you do is just press a button and now it's a different show.
As if that's
It's
it.
the
Yeah.
funniest thing. It's like,
The
it's
mood
like totally
changes.
nothing. It's just
Yeah.
like a pause, and all of a sudden it's a totally different show. All of a sudden
Yeah.
now it's the after show. Now we just
Yeah.
press the button and now it's the after show. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I said the mood changes and everything. Yeah, it's good. It's good. So we've got listener feedback. Okay.
Yeah. This one's good. This one's good because I'm not mad.
There's only
about
two good feedback, eh?
Oh yeah. There's no one. I think people are too afraid to send us some bad stuff because I don't play. I mean, they all send it to me, but I don't really play around. Like the shorter my responses are, the more irritated I am. So just for people's FYI. This is from Antioch Forge. He says, you need to get an intern. You have a Knife Talk podcast, so reoccurring questions like Jeff's favorite topic, plunge lines, can be discussed by a rookie or a newbie with maybe a possibly funny perspective. Number 2, an intern can cover down and let one of you take a break for a week if you need to. 3, interns get abused and maybe there's funny content there. 4, you can give them weekly, monthly projects / techniques to learn that would be a bit on the show for them to talk about. Sounds like we're working very hard for this intern, by the way.
Very hard, yeah. 5,
an ideal intern would likely solicit unsolicited advice when discussing number 4, which is this is number 6. All good radio shows end up and have interns. Congratulations, you've made it. Time to have an intern. Number 7, even trying to find an intern for the show would be a good bit for the show. He's not wrong about that. And number 8, it's a good idea because I'm not even volunteering myself for the spot. I'm too old for that shit and your abuse. Love the show. Keep doing what you're doing. But an intern would be fun.
Oh, can you imagine just having somebody we could just batter every week? It'd be terrible. It would be
I could
terrible.
could never have an intern for this reason. I would be it would be very, very hard to be an intern for me on a radio show. Not because I'm going to do Baba Booey and like yell at him all the time, but my expectations will be strict. There's very little. I have very little patience for some things that don't get done. So it would be tough. However, an intern to deal with the DMs would be great,
Yeah. I think the three of us have done this long enough now together, the three of us, that having somebody else in, they'd always be an outsider, if you know what I mean. There's certain things that, we've talked about and all the rest of it that those conversations have already happened. And if somebody else is here and they haven't heard those conversations, they're always going to feel a bit of an out. It wouldn't really work.
No, but the intern goes like, I'm like, oh, where are the show notes? Hey, Carlos, where you said it on? What page is it on? No, that's not Carlos. It's got to be someone. We got to come up with another name. I was going to make a bit and say that we should have like AI, and from now on, all the DMs will be answered by our new AI. And I was going to do I was going to be a real dick in the DMs, like responding and then like just like letting people know that there'll be a little robot face, and then that's not me, it's the robot answering, and just be like, that's a dumb question. We answered that 100 times. Stop the nonsense. I'm not here. I'm not your babysitter. If you need to find a friend. There is one thing I will say. I love our listeners. But I'm glad this is not a relationship show, because my first answer to every relationship question is you might be too needy. You might
possibly.
You might be too needy. You might be too needy. So.
Okay, any more feedback?
Oh, yeah, we got a pile of feedback. This one comes from, actually, this is a good one from Josh Wentz. I heard you guys mention, that's actually a valuable one. Josh Wentz says, I've heard you guys mention a few times on the show about winning on Forge and Fire and getting your winnings taxed. I was told after I won by the producers that if I get an LLC and use the full amount for my shop, I could write it all off and keep the full 10 G's. So that's exactly what I did. I hired an accountant to do my taxes. I was able to keep every penny, and the $600 I spent on the accountant was worth it. To top it all off, the accountant turned around and bought one of my knives for me as well, so it all paid for itself. So I asked a couple questions more, because it's not like, that episode of The Office where Michael Scott says, I declare bankruptcy. If you do create an LLC, you would have to have the check, the whole 10 G sent, and you'd have to use it through the shop completely. So you'd have to also figure out your payments. Like you can do what Tony and I have, we have disbursements, but the disbursements come not as a W-2. It would come as like a different kind of K form. So it's like the tax system is all very strange. But if you are on Forge and Fire and you want the whole 10 G's, send it through your LLC and then, buy the groceries through the company card, I guess, or whatever. So
wouldn't have a clue how the American tax system works. Don't know. But we got somebody with first-hand experience here.
Who's that?
Mr. Mareko Momasi.
Oh yeah, that's right. So what? I forgot. I thought you were talking. I thought you had an accountant in the room or something like that.
A tax expert. Yeah, we just what do we do? We didn't run it through the LLC. I think part of the thing with the LLC, so you can. I've been learning about trying to learn more about LLCs lately because of other things I got going on in my life. But you can elect to do your taxes, even though you're an LLC. There are different level or different types of LLCs, and you can elect to do your taxes as a C corp, as an S corp, or as a sole proprietorship. And depending on how you do that, will affect how the taxes or how the money gets taxed. And I think it's like something, if it goes through like an corp, you could do the dispersed, like was saying, and that money wouldn't necessarily get taxed. But then when the person, as it being earned income, then it would get taxed later. But it's a little like the taxing levels are different. And there's also, as a C corp, there's potentially some concern of getting double taxed, especially because it's not life-changing money. So we just took it, deposited it, paid our tax on it. We just treat it like income.
We've got to the point where we're talking about taxes now.
I know, what the fuck are we doing?
Jeez. I think that's a show. Thank you all for listening. We shall speak to you next week.
This show is brought to you by The Makery, the podcast network for makers.
Are we still here?
Nobody's listening anymore. We're fine. We're good. Nobody's listening.
The double show, the double after show. You're the man. You are the man.
Keep ending it.
Yeah, everything. You're the fucking man. Craig Lockwood. You're the.
This could be like the Truman Show. I'll just have the webcam and next to me sleeping tonight. Like
I love it. I love it. I bought that too. I totally bought it. I was just like, fuck. I was trying to do. There's a funny bit that Griff was. I was trying to find this bit to try to trick you guys with this thing. There was really funny. Okay, I'll tell. Spell McDonald. Either one of you.
As in
one of you. Quick.
Donald.
Okay. Yeah. What does? I fucked the whole joke up. I'm sorry, Griff. I fucked the whole joke. Basically, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to spell McDonald.
McDonald.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I fucked it up again. I'm supposed to spell it, and you're supposed to say it. So you should end the show.
It's the way you tell him, Jeff. It's the way you tell him this joke.
Dude, end the show again. End the show again. We got to start this all over again. We fucking end the show again. I need another fucking break.
Let's
end the show again.
This show is brought to you by The Makery, the podcast network for makers.
Oh man, that was so much fun, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Francesca Mucci is playing bass along to the this music, the show music. So I think he'd be very good at it now. He's played a few times.
Ben Stark says this is the Matryoshka doll of all podcasts. I think so. I think that's really funny. I think that's your new bit. I think next week you should end the show in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's a show. We're done. Yeah. Plunge lines again. We're done.
That's you hang up on all of us all the time. Yeah. How many times you can hang up on us? Damn.
Oh, this is my new hang up bet. We just reworked it.
We just did it. We're not done with the show. So what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do for the 200th episode?
I think we are on 197 now, so I think we've got in 3 more shows is the 200th. I've been working on a quiz, but it'd be nice to get some special guests in as well.
Right.
For, whether we're quizzing with them or whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
That could
You
be
know what's
good.
weird about the whole counting thing is I know people. I have a weird story. When I was younger, I used to count my lures, and I used to number them, and I used to have every one of them had a number, and I could tell which number it was. And then I was into comic books, and when I was into comic books, I collected the number. Like the number was very important. Like I really wanted to be in order. And then when I was in high school, I remembered I had a friend in high school who used to tell us how many times he had sex with his girlfriend. And it was so gross, not just with all these other people, like I was with 10 girls or whatever. He would tell us the same one. And it was so gross. It was like, come back from school, be like, up to 49 times, guys. And we're just like, we're like, and
Strange man.
it was a high school kid. And all I could think of was, my friends were like, why the fuck do we care how many times you've had sex with your girlfriend? He would literally report every time he had sex. He count.
He wasn't getting anybody who does that isn't
No.
really getting it.
This was like a young stud, but at the same time, it was just like we're all like, it was like, why are you counting? Oh, just say you had sex. So then when I started counting, when I was doing the lures, it got to the point where I was just like, God, this really reminds me of that kid saying, he's counting everyone, like every single time mattered. And I was just like, I'm not counting anymore. I'm done counting. So I stopped with all the counting. I don't count the knives. I don't count the years. I don't know how many years I've done anything. I don't count. I don't keep track because all I could think of is this kid come in and be like, yep, had sex with my girlfriend again. That's up to 52. And it's like, what the fuck do you care?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
What a loser.
No, he was okay. He didn't know. He was young and he was getting it before all of us. But it was just like he was rubbing it in. But it was like annoying. It was just like it's the same person. We shouldn't do that.
No. Oh no. Which reminds me. So anybody in the chat now, if you're still here in this secret after show, I struggle every week with titles for the show. So if you've got a title for the show, stick it in the chat and maybe we can use that this week. I always forget when it comes to Monday morning and I do the edit and I put it up. I'm like, I'm not listening back to the show every week. I can't. I'm not doing that to myself. So it's always difficult to remember. So yeah, if you've got a title for the show, stick it in the chat and maybe we can use that. That'd be cool.
It's tough. You always do good names though. It's nice to name them.
Yeah, it's good that they're named, I think, instead of numbered, like you said. But yeah, it's difficult. But yeah, we need something special for the
Eric Carnivale, the ninth.
He's obsessed
banana.
with these bananas.
Dude, he loves the bananas. He loves the bananas. All right, let's listen to our listeners, and you guys got to start putting them in. I don't know if Brian, if you're in the room, Brian, you better come up with a title now because if you're not, that means you're not here.
We know you're not here.
We got big troubles. Maybe you got sucked into how many after shows we were doing. Maybe you didn't know.
No, maybe.
I don't know. This might be a banning. We might have to get back on.
Jeff, to go back to earlier on the show when you were talking about the Condé Nast stuff, staging out the knives. When I was working for Bob, he had a few, like the CBS morning show came and did a thing, and there were a couple of those. But we staged out stuff. But the problem is like, because it is so like process heavy, you gotta have like 10 or 12 knives set up.
I know.
At various stages of the process.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know.
Maybe that could be your next run of knives.
It's trust me, for the past week and a half, I've been thinking about it. And because this show is very process oriented, like they'll have a chef butchering a tuna for sushi. And I said to the people, I'm like, look, you can bring a dude in with a tuna and he can process it in one day. It's not really like that with knife making. And I started to think about what I was practicing. I'm going to practice. And then I'm trying to think about which knife should I do? Like I kind of want to do something simple, but at the same time, I should do something that I'm kind of known for, or I want to be known for.
Yeah, exactly.
So then it becomes like, if I did something that I'm not known for, that's kind of dumb. And then I thought maybe what I should do is if I do the forging, maybe I'll forge with mild steel, and then have the staging. I have thought about it all, and it's nothing. It's almost to the point now where like if they decide to go a different direction, I might breathe a sigh of relief. Like, I want it. I'm going to do it, but
it's going to be a lot of work.
It's going to be a lot of work. And I said to them, I'm like, you can't call me up on Sunday saying we're coming up Monday, because then it's going to be a shit house. Like, I don't want there to be 5 guys, lighting and everything like that, and I'm trying to forge out a knife, and I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do when I'm going to have to really have enough time to stage a lot of it out. So it's heavily on my mind. Actually going to talk to Jimmy. I'm interviewing Jimmy DeResta tomorrow for 2 weeks from now, and I'm going to come up in 2 weeks. I'm actually
he's going to have insight, obviously, with his show.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for the show because talking to Jimmy, it's like I want to do the same thing everybody else has done. So I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah, it's definitely Mareko. It's something that's really on my mind because they want to be able. And the cool thing is it's voiceover with the video. Because the voice over the video allows me to I could just say some, and then that's the other thing. It's like, once again, I'm on the hook for being correct with everything. They're not going to know. And then if I do a miss hit and I can't turn to the cameraman and say, don't put in that part. He didn't give a shit. It's going to, all of a sudden I got bird's beak on the end of the knife. And it's like, don't put that part in. Like, bird's beak? What are you talking? The whole thing is actually very vexing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we treated it like a cooking show.
It's going to be a lot of work.
They put the raw chicken in the oven and then they pull out a finished chicken kind of situation.
Yeah.
Someday I'll have to tell you when I would do a TV show with that, which will never come online, thank God. But I did a cooking segment with when I was at a bakery, and it was embarrassing. And it was the funniest part is when Hillary was very pregnant watching, and the host was afraid she was going to give birth at any moment, and it made him very uncomfortable that she was in there. She was pregnant. It wasn't just like, help, I'm giving birth, and she was like, I know what's going on, but he kept on saying, he's like, you're making me so uncomfortable you being here, and he kicked her out.
Oh, wow.
But we had to do fake cookies, and it was stupid. Thank God it'll never come out.
So when do they need sort of answers from you? When will the decision be made?
I don't know. I sent them an email, and they were saying, do you have any blackout dates in the next few weeks? And I was like, no. But I'm just like, I'm thinking about here's the funny thing is I could do I can't fake my 8-inch K-tips that I already have. I can't forge a knife out and then everything else is the stainless steel K-tips because you're going to be able to see it. So it's like there's so much shit. And then at the same time, it's like, and I know we're going over, but I'm going to forge the knife, but in my mind, I want to have very little forge scale. So the regular people watching it, seeing it as this looks like a professional knife that I've seen in the store. Like that's in my mind. Like if I make it too rustic, will that translate over to a buyer that custom knife makers aren't just making caveman knives? Because even though that we see forge scale on the spines and what Neil does, what everybody does, where you're leaving them, it still doesn't truly translate to the regular people. So I want to make something that they're familiar with seeing.
Yeah,
so it's
but it
like
needs to be a good advert for your work too. Obviously, that's
well.
why
I mean,
you're
I'm
taking the
not
job.
going to get. I'm most likely not going to get paid for it. So it's like I have to make this work as best I can.
Yeah. Right.
Dude,
okay.
Ben Stark. Is your mother still listening to this? Does your mother know that you wrote Geoff can't fake his 8 inches? I don't think your mother listens to this part. Ben Stark's mom. That was your son wrote that. How outrageous. Outrageous.
Disgusting.
Maybe the title of the show should be Ben's mom. Ben's a pervert. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, because we know his mum's going to be listening to that bit. Yeah. Anyway, I need to go. It is like proper late here now. And we're on 2 hours. This is a 2-hour show, a monster show. Yeah, I need to go. My wife is expecting sex for the 8,312th time tonight. and note them all down. Not tonight.
No, he's been counting. It's a callback to the counting joke.
Oh,
That's my guy. I love a callback joke. See you later, everybody.
Bye bye.